Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today I want to talk about different aspects or qualities of training. And specifically, I want to help you identify maybe different movement qualities that you're not hitting enough of for either your goals or your long-term health, and then brainstorm how to actually include these things. So we're going to go through each movement quality, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a sample workout that touches on every single one of these things. But before we get into that, if this is your first time here, my name is Justina. I'm a New York City-based personal trainer who honestly just loves helping people set goals and achieve them. Really freaking simple. So if that's you, I would love for you to stick around by hitting the subscribe button. I do have a very lofty goal of trying to hit 100K by the end of the year. So let's dive into these different movement qualities. All right, so I want you to think of these different movement qualities as buckets, like buckets that you need to fill. We have mobility, power, strength, hypertrophy, and endurance. These are not only all different ways we can move, but these could be considered different goals. Now, I would say most of my audience is Gen Pop or general population. Most of the people that I work with are general population. Some of my clients do have more lofty performance goals. Like I have 2 clients who run marathons. I have another client who does Spartan races. But at the end of the day, they are still general population. So I'm going to alter how much effort I'm putting into certain buckets, but I still want to make sure we're hitting everything. So that is also more than likely you. Maybe not the marathons or the Spartan races, but like we want to be hitting all of the buckets. And quite often what you see, and I'll use myself as an example, a lot of people are naturally better at maybe 1 or 2 of these buckets. And because they're good at it, and we're humans, we like being good at things, we spend a lot of time in those buckets. Again, myself, for instance, I'm pretty short and compact. I'm like 5 feet tall. I'm kind of built like a gymnast. I'm powerful, okay? I am springy, I'm powerful, I'm fast in short bursts. So naturally, I gravitate toward a lot of power training, a lot of explosive movement. And if you watch my 2025 goals video, you'll know that my cardiovascular capability or my endurance was shit. So that's been a big goal of mine this year, and one of the reasons why I took up running. That's not the video for today, but I just want to use myself as an example. So specifically with these buckets, I was spending a lot of time in power and strength and not nearly as much time in endurance. Or not really any time. So we're fixing that. And look, you might cycle through different parts of your life where you're paying more attention to different buckets. Not saying that we need to put the same effort into everything, but we need to be putting something into each one at some point. And the reason for that is because studies have shown that we're going to feel and live a lot better as we age if we are paying attention to all of these different movement qualities. Now, I do actually have videos on every single one of these topics, but today we're going to touch on them briefly so we're all on the same page before I give you the sample workout that does implement all of these at the end. Let's start at the top with mobility. So mobility really simply is just strength through the full range of motion you have at a joint. You will see some wild shit out there and people call it mobility, but mobility can be really, really simple. A great example here are CARS. CARS stands for controlled articular rotations, which is just a really fancy way of saying a controlled joint circle. And that's going to be a go-to for me on a day-to-day basis. I'll just do like a quick 5-minute head-to-toe CARS routine. And the reason for that is because I'm literally just trying to preserve the mobility that I have at a joint. That's what CARS are going to do. You can use them to preserve the mobility that you have, or on the clinical standpoint, you can use it as a mobility assessment to see where someone might be lacking in a certain range of motion. And then, with mobility work, we can get really fancy and like more advanced than that. We can do passive range liftoffs, passive range holds, end range rotations, eccentric neural grooving. I'm not explaining what all of that is, but what I will explain is that a lot of your mobility work you can probably get done in your movement prep or your warm up before your strength training or before your cardio work. It kind of comes down to like your enjoyment and the time that you have to commit to it. But I find that for most people, because we're already so slammed for free time anyway, doing a lot of your mobility work at the beginning of your workout or maybe even at the end is the best bang for your buck. Okay, moving into power training. So the way that I like to look at power, it's just like it's speed strength. So it's moving quickly or moving weight quickly. Technically, power is work over time. So like how much time does it take you to do a certain task? And an example of this would be like a push press. So how long does it take you to get the weight from point A to point B? And there's going to be 2 different things I'm looking at with power training, force production and force absorption. And there is a lot of overlap here, but they are 2 different things. And just so we're on the same page, because force and power, they're different. Force is mass. God, I feel like I'm back in studying for CSCS. Force is mass times acceleration. So like how much load or mass or weight you can move, and like in how fast you do it. It's how much weight you're moving at a certain speed. Jesus Christ, that should have been way simpler to explain. So an example of producing force would again be a push press. How quickly are we moving that load from point A to point B? And on the flip side, absorbing force would be something more like a depth drop or a drop freeze, whatever you want to call it, when you jump off of something and land. And with most power work, there is an element of like producing and absorbing force. Even in a push press, you do have to absorb that force as it comes back down. So what I'm going to do with people as I'm choosing where we're focusing our power, what are you good at? Are you good at producing or absorbing force? And we're probably going to do a little bit more of what you're not good at. Then moving into strength, again, to keep it super simple, strength is just like how much weight can you move? And then we can pick apart strength a little bit more by looking at both absolute and relative strength. So absolute strength is just like how much weight you can move regardless of your body size. And then relative strength is like how much weight you can move based on your body size. And a lot of times you see like absolute strength exercises are typically going to be like where you're putting load on your body, like deadlift, squats, whatever. And then relative strength exercises we typically think of as like push-ups or pull-ups, like body weight, stuff like that. I wouldn't say that's like a hard and fast definition between the two, but it gives you a good enough idea for the sake of this video. Then we're moving into hypertrophy. Pretty often, I actually see people getting strength and hypertrophy confused. There's definitely an overlap in the sense that like you're going to get stronger with hypertrophy training, but the end goal is different. So hypertrophy basically just means like visible muscle growth, and more of like max strength work that is going to not necessarily have the same aesthetic outcome. It kind of really depends and like comes down to the programming. To keep it really simple, strength, like max strength work or like true strength work is typically going to be lower reps, and then hypertrophy is going to be like a little higher rep. It really is just like on the internal level, it's a different stimulus for like the muscle and bone. So because it's a different stimulus, it's going to have a different adaptation. Now, you can also do big compound lifts like squats and deadlifts. You can do that and program it for max strength, or you can do that and program it for hypertrophy. But I would say a lot of times like you see more of the hypertrophy work in the accessory work. So like hamstring curls, bicep curls, tricep extensions, cable crunches, things like that. But again, it truly does just come down to programming, but also like no one's programming tricep extensions for like max strength. All right. And then finally, we're getting into endurance. This is going to be essentially sustained movement. And you can think of this as straight cardio. So like running, rowing, or cycling. You can also think of it as weight training with lighter weight, higher work time, and lower rest time. So you could absolutely program swings or lunges or squats for more of a sustained strength or endurance goal. Again, because what does this come down to? Programming. I think that's the theme that we've seen here. And like I said, endurance is typically going to be higher reps or just higher work time with a lower rest time. So the goal with this type of training is to work longer with less recovery needed. All right, so let's jump into programming. How can we get something from every bucket into one workout? We're actually just going to make a program in the exact order that I broke down all of these different movement qualities. We are going to build a full body pull day because that's what I feel like doing. And all that means is that we're going to focus on more of the posterior chain or the back of the body. So I want you to think like hamstrings, glutes, back, biceps, whatever. Biceps I know are in the front. They're technically a pull muscle. It's fine. Don't worry about it. So we're going to walk through the whole thing, and then we're going to go back and explain the why behind it, because I didn't build this from the top down. I'd kind of start in the center and work my way out. So starting with our mobility, we're going to start with some side lying hip cars. So this is, like we talked about, just a movement that accesses the full range of motion in our hip socket. And we're going to go for 5 on each side here. Then we're going to flip onto the stomach. We're going into a prone swimmer. So this is going to work through our entire shoulder mobility, and it's going to start to get the back nice and warmed up. We're going to go for 5 reps. Then we're going to stand up, grab a nice heavy weight, and hold the bottom of a deadlift. This is going to just take 30 seconds, but I want you to really think of pulling the hips back, pulling the knees back in line with the ankles, and creating space through the back of the hip capsule. And then finally, we're going to do 2 sets of this split squat sequence. This is one of my favorites. You can format this in a lot of different ways, but it's going to get things fired fast. In this one that I'm showing, we're doing 5 split squats into 5 heel lifts and then 5 extensives. That's 1 rep, and we're going to do this twice on each side. Then moving into power work, we're going to do a little 3 clean complex. So we'll do a dead clean, a hang clean, and then a split clean. And we're just going to do this once on each side, 3 times through. We're only doing 1 rep. So you want to grab something that's heavy, but not so heavy that it slows you down. And you could even scale this, like starting with something a little bit more moderate and working your way up as you get warmer. Then moving into our strength block, we're just going to go for some deadlifts. I don't care what deadlift, pick the one you like, conventional, sumo, trap bar, RDL, whatever, but we're gonna do 5 sets of 5 reps, 5 reps, 5 reps, then 3 and 3. So basically what we're doing here, I'm building it in so you have a warm up. Your first set, 5 reps, that should be like a solid 60% effort, probably like 4 reps left in the tank. Then crank it up a little bit, 70% effort. I would say let's do another at 70%. Then we're gonna add a little more weight and we're going for like a solid 8 to 9 out of 10, 3 reps, and hopefully we just have 1 or 2 reps left in the tank here. Then we've got hypertrophy. So we're gonna do a little tricep because I don't know, I don't like wasting time in the gym. So we're gonna do Bulgarians, 3 sets of 8 on each side, right into single arm bench supported rows, 3 sets of 8 on each side, and then right into some bicep curls, 3 sets of 12. We're gonna take 90 seconds rest for this guy because this is a lot of work in one circuit, but this is all gonna be more of like our visible gains, muscle growth goal type of stuff. And then finally, we've got our endurance work. So we're gonna be doing some skaters and some swings back and forth, 20 seconds in each, and then just a quick 20 seconds rest. All right, so really quickly going back to like how I chose all of this specific stuff, I'm gonna work from the middle and build my way out. So I don't want to make this too much about like how I chose everything, but I do just want to give you the why in case you, want to try and do this on your own. So I started with my big lift, which is our strength block, and I chose a deadlift. So our deadlift is going to be hip extension. So that means when I'm looking at my power work, I ideally want to choose something that's going to prep me for that. And I ended up choosing cleans for 2 reasons. Number 1, it is an explosive hip extension movement, but number 2, I'm also looking ahead and I have these rows, and the clean is going to get a lot of that shoulder extension working because we have to pull back to punch. And that's really going to prep us for our single arm rows that we're seeing in our hypertrophy work. So we kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone there. So moving down into the hypertrophy work, you saw that we already have deadlift. So that's going to be a bilateral hip dominant movement. So I'm going, okay, let me get something different in here. I'm going to do something that still targets more of the back of the body. Because remember, it's a pull day, but I want to get something knee dominant and single leg or unilateral. So we're going to do Bulgarians. And what do we need for Bulgarians? We need a bench. So with my next exercise, can I use that bench again? So I didn't grab it just for one thing. It's a pull day. Let's do some rows. And we're going to use that bench for lots of support. Then finally, we got to get those show muscles popping. What's a show muscle for a pull day? It's the biceps. We're just going to do some bicep curls. You could even, if you want, sit down or do an incline dumbbell curl if you really want to use that bench again. Then moving down into the endurance work, I'm going to look at things that we haven't touched on, whether it's different tempos, different planes of motion, just kind of seeing what we're missing. And we didn't have anything in the frontal plane or moving side to side, so that's why I put in some skaters. And then I paired it with some swings for no other reason aside from the fact that I like them. That's kind of it. Sometimes it's not that serious. And then I'm going to jump all the way back up to my mobility or my movement prep. And I'm basically looking at the joints and the movement patterns that I'm going to need to access for my lifts. And I'm just making sure that those are primed. So we're doing hip cars because we have a lot of hip dominant movements. We're doing that prone swimmer because it's going to get that back fired up. And we are using the shoulders in different ways today. Swimmers are really going to target a lot of shoulder extension or moving behind the body. And we're going to need that for a row and a clean. Deadlift iso. We're doing deadlifts. I love an isometric of whatever the big lift is to really get the shit fired. And then finally, the split squat sequence, that I chose for 2 reasons. Number 1, obviously we are doing a Bulgarian, which is the split squat variation. Number 2, because we're working a little bit more of that impact right here, we're ramping ourselves up into our power work. We're not just going from like more passive stretching, jumping right into some explosive movement. Whew, all right, and that's it. I tried to make this as like even as possible in terms of a routine. I would say, does every single one of your workouts need to hit all of these things or hit them evenly? Not at all. You can kind of ebb and flow throughout your week. And I think, again, a lot of this comes down to what your goals are, what you're naturally good at, what you've been focused on, and maybe what you're missing. So if you have any questions about this program or how to get a little bit more of a specific bucket into your daily life, let me know down below. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos, and I'll see you in the next one.